I see what I do see what you're saying. I see where you're coming from. I feel like it's almost the opposite for me. Is like
Gotcha.
because the way you're explaining it, it's almost like you experienced something, so you're strong. And it's like no, like you like something. The way that you handle yourself, being resilient, is what gives you strength. Does that make sense? So to me, it's almost the opposite. Like, and the way I'm kind of picturing this in my brain, I'm like a very visual person, is like resilience on a continuum or like a timeline kind of where to me, the way you're explaining it is kind of like resilience starts when almost, I mean, to tie it back in, almost when you start playing offense,
Gotcha.
which what we just said was we're playing defense in preparation. Like part of playing defense is understanding mentally where am I at right now and what do I need to do. I think that's part of resilience and I think that's part of strength. I think both of those things, like prepping for what you need to do and acknowledging where you're at, acknowledging, if it's just I can't do anything tonight. I need to rest. I need to meditate. I need to journal. And maybe that to some people that may be an action, to just some people that's not quite yet action.
Fair.
Um, but I think that all fits together. So I don't think resilience starts at a certain point. I think it's the whole experience within itself.
I can see that.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with Courtney on that one. For once.
No, that's not
Here we go.
What?
Here we go.
May 18th. Let's
No.
mark it on the calendar.
No, I would have to. It's actually Haitian Flag Day too. Oof, look at that. But now you guys know why we recorded this. But anyways, I'd have to agree just because you can be resilient when playing offense or when being in defense. Like it's just one of those things. You're gonna have tough situations that you have to navigate too.
Gotcha.
And in the end, what makes I guess one person resilient towards anything is, and this is how I help myself become resilient in any situation. I understand my goal, whether it's for the day, whether it's for a task, whether it's for, just my long-term vision of how I would like things to be. But it's the only way for you to ever be resilient in anything. You have to have a goal with a task that you're attaching it to. And if you give up on it, well, let's just say you're stuck. You're stuck
Sure.
with the goal. If you find your way through it, yeah, you're resilient through the entire process. But if you just sat there and just hope for, God to come down and save you, or just hope for somebody to come by and bless you, at that point, you weren't really resilient because there was nothing that was being done. It was just, I guess you were strong then. I guess in that situation, yeah, you held on strong because you didn't give up on
Yeah.
it, but
Yeah.
you didn't really do anything to progress towards it.
I see
Yeah,
your point.
I think I was just going to bring up one example that makes me think back of when I was in like the domestic violence field and working with survivors of domestic violence. Because I think this comes up a lot with like the offensive defense and where does strength come in, resilience, things like that. And because when you're working with people who experience that type of abuse or just, negative, really difficult experiences,
Yeah.
that process of kind of just like sitting with it, like like really taking in what happened or just allowing yourself a moment is a huge like area of strength and area
Yeah.
of resilience, and it really jumpstarts the process. You wouldn't expect someone to get out of that and be like, cool, go buy a house. Like,
Yeah.
they're gonna need to find shelter and they're gonna need to find somewhere
Yes.
safe, but
Yes.
you wouldn't expect that person. And if they did do that, then you're kind of like, slow down. It's
Yeah.
okay to take a second. Like, you need to take a step back and like you got out of a really difficult situation, and that's really hard. So sometimes I feel like taking a step back and sitting with it for a moment is absolutely necessary to propel yourself forward. So I think that's part of it as well. So of course it just depends on the situation, but it just reminded me of things like that because I mean those are some of the most resilient people I've come in contact with as well.
See, you just somewhat validated what I said earlier by taking a step back. That's part of doing something about the situation, right? Isn't it? So I agree. You must, there are situations when you have to take a step back, to reevaluate how you even want to move forward with this situation. So if you must take a step back, what does that look like? on your day to day. Let's say today you're facing some sort of challenge, right? Because life is not rainbows and sunshine right now. For there are things that you need to do to be able to either put food on the table or get better. What does it look like for you to take that step back and say, hey, I'm allowing myself to breathe a little before I do anything else. Do you have an example?
I mean, I'm sure I have a lot, but I think it depends on the experience. I think I'm gonna go back to strength a little bit, because I think when it comes to, and I think the reason that I do that is because when I think of resilience, my brain puts a lot of weight on that word. Like, it's like a really, really heavy word. And like when you mentioned traffic before, that was just like, oh yeah, I wonder, like, could that be classified as resilience? Like, I got home today and I didn't freak out. Just things like that. Like, does that count as resilience? So that's an interesting thing to me. But so I think of resilience as a really, really big word. Not that it has to be, that's just how my brain does it. So I think I'm more easily able to comprehend strength. But I mean, in terms of like the domestic violence, I remember an event that I went to for survivors of domestic violence, and we were kind of talking about the period of time in between, like beginning to heal, beginning to step into action, but also just like making sure you're safe. And when we think of safety, it's not physical safety, it's psychological safety as well, because you might be in a physically safe space, but the impacts of trauma, or, if it could be a certain noise, it could be people yelling, and automatically you're not psychologically safe in that moment. So just allowing yourself time to find that psychological safety, and it just kind of takes that reminding yourself it's okay, I'm in a different situation now, therapy, whatever people are needing to find that safety. But I remember what we were talking about was that this conversation, actually, that it's okay to take time, it's okay to take a breath, like really just look at, not dwell on the past, but more so, I'm not there anymore. I am safe now. It is okay. And acknowledge the strength that you had to get out of that situation, which is kind of funny, going on a tangent a little bit, because I said before, like, you're not necessarily strong because you experienced something. But then in this example, I think people who experience that and get out of it are, of course, that is a huge strength. To not be in that situation anymore, to leave a relationship like that, is extremely dangerous. So that is a strength, just to have experienced it. They don't even need to take steps. In my eyes, they don't need to do anything to be strong after that if they left this situation. And even if they didn't, let me say that as well, even if they're in the relationship, I think there is a strength there as well, because I understand how much goes into it. Now we're having a whole domestic violence conversation. But anyway, I remember the conversation just talking about how it's okay to take time. And when we look at healing, I think this is a big thing nowadays as well, with like media and what does healing look like, and being the best version of yourself, and all these different things. And it's like, yeah, we got to go heal. Like, I want to go heal today.
Healing is the cool now.
Yeah, it's like a trend. Yeah, it's like, okay, but what does that look like, and where does the healing start?
Yes.
Right? And I think part of healing is acknowledging where you're at, and like we said, what is the next step? What is the next step towards my goals? If you're that more goal-oriented person, absolutely, where do I need to go from here? So yeah, I think it depends. But one thing that we said, and I've brought it up a couple times since then, that was years ago, is that acknowledging that part sucked. And that's the word that I use. It doesn't have to be pretty. That part sucked, and what I went through sucked, and it's okay to embrace the suck. That's what we came up with, is, and that's part of healing as well. So when I keep talking about defense, and Ron, when you asked me how I was doing before, I didn't really answer that question, because right now, the experience, what I'm going through in my life, I am embracing the suck. It's not the most fun part, because I know I'm just putting in the work to get better, and this is the sucky part, But I know, looking forward, I'm going to be proud. I'm going to recognize the resilience that I've had and the strength that I've had. But this is the embrace the suck period.
Yeah.
So, but then it kind of, I guess I I think I made more questions than answers, because it's like, okay, if you're embracing the suck, did strength start yet? Did resilience start yet? But I think why I brought strength up before, I'm just gonna keep talking, is people have, like, when you think, okay, I'm gonna make it a question. When you think of strength, or when I just say the word strength, like, what comes into your head? Is there an image? Is there other words come up? Like, what does strength look like?
It's muscle to me.
Okay, I'm so glad you said that.
Yeah.
So, but
I
so
will
in this
say,
conversation, go ahead, Francis. You didn't.
no, I was just
I
gonna
didn't give you a
say
chance.
courage. When I think of strength, I think of courage.
Mm-hmm. So, different answers could be. I mean, they can go together, but different answers. But I think in society, when you talk about strength, or even when you talk about courage, maybe even resilience, those words could be, people could say the same thing. Oh, someone who's like big and tough, someone who, I think honestly, it's probably because it's one of the first places I heard it, but I think of like military when I hear resilience. And I don't have a military like background or anything like that. I think it was literally just like commercials or something that's
Be
just what my brain,
resilient.
it just connects to like those types of memories that I have. So it's just more that like, I mean, I think being masculine or being male or those things go into that, what is strength. And it doesn't have to be that way. And that's why I say my teens are so resilient, is because they are the ones who are mostly willing to come in and talk about the things that they've experienced. And to me, talking about it, embracing the suck, when I honestly, they would hate if they heard this, but I have a boy who will come in, he's about 14 years old, and he will come in and he'll talk about the abuse that he's experienced, and he cries. And it took a long time for him to feel comfortable crying in front of me. And every time I see this, in my head, I'm just like, you are the strongest person I know. That just shows so much strength to me. And honestly, the conversations that you guys are having, that's what strength is to me. Like being able to open the floor to these types of conversations. That's what strength is, not being afraid to have these types of conversations and different topics that people don't always talk about. Going back to domestic violence, the woman who discussed her experience with rape and sexual abuse, that is so much strength. And that's not what we think of when we think of strength. That's not necessarily what we think of when we think of resilience. I said so much. I don't know which part you guys are going to respond to, but that's my tangent.
No, I think, because I want to respond to and kind of give a story. Francis, I think we experienced it today, and I don't think he realizes it. But for those that know Francis, back in the 4 or 5 years, that boy was a big partier, and today we actually, I forgot what the circumstance. I think I was trying to get something to drink, and I mean, I looked at the wall and I was like, yeah, that looks very pleasing. And he looked at the wall, he's like, yeah, nah, that's not me anymore. And I mean, that right there shows extreme resilience towards, and I don't even think it's strength at that point, because man, this boy here, oh man, you guys would, he's a whole nother character. But anyways, he I think you showed resilience right then and there by just not paying it any mind and actually reflecting. At that same time, you reflected and it was like, yeah, it was good times, but that's not where you're at today. And I think that in itself just shows extreme resilience. I just want to share that because I don't think you really picked that up. And as we're talking about it and talking about it a little bit more, I was like, yeah, no, that was really strong. I didn't try to entice him to do anything that is out of his norm, and if I tried to, he probably wouldn't budge. But I don't know. I guess we'll save that. We'll save that story for next time to tell you guys exactly what happened there.
I appreciate you sharing that. It's part of what I was talking about earlier, where you don't really pay attention to the fact that was an act of resilience until we're sitting here reflecting. And I just want to put it out there as a disclaimer: we're no expert. Nobody on this, in this conversation has taken a course on resilience or did some research on it. We're all talking from our own perspective and how we approach it in our day to day.